power of looping and for next, with the subtitle, Efficiently Repeating Tasks with For Next Loops in Sheerpower. In this segment, we'll explore how to use for next loops to efficiently repeat tasks in your code. By mastering these loops, you can automate repetitive actions and enhance the performance of your Sheerpower programs. Let's dive into the world of looping and learn how to leverage for next loops effectively. Looping constructs are essential in Sheerpower for repeating tasks efficiently. We'll cover do loop, while, until, and for next loops, which allow you to automate repetitive actions and enhance your code's performance. Do loop in Sheerpower creates a loop that repeatedly executes a block of code until a specified condition is met. Do end do executes a loop block once. Use exit do to exit the loop prematurely, and repeat do to restart the loop from the beginning. While and until can occur anywhere within a loop to control its execution based on conditions. In this example, we demonstrate the use of various do loop constructs in Sheerpower. First, we create a loop to read lines from a file. This loop reads lines from a file until the end of the file is reached. If the end of the file, EOF, is reached, the loop exits. Next, we use a while loop to iterate as long as a condition is true. This loop continues to execute while counter is less than 10. It prints the value of counter and increments it by 1 with each iteration. Finally, we use an until loop to iterate until a condition becomes true. This loop continues to execute until counter equals 10. It prints the value of counter and increments it by 1 with each iteration. These examples illustrate how to use do loop constructs with while and until conditions to control the flow of your program based on specific criteria. While and until statements allow you to control the loop based on specific conditions. While continues the loop as long as the condition is true, and until continues until the condition becomes true. In this example, we demonstrate the use of do while and do until loops in Sheerpower. First, we create a do while loop that continues as long as a condition is true. This loop starts with counter set to 0 and continues to execute while counter is less than 10. It prints the value of counter and increments it by 1 with each iteration. Next, we create a do until loop that continues until a condition becomes true. This loop also starts with counter set to 0 and continues to execute until counter equals 10. It prints the value of counter and increments it by 1 with each iteration. These examples illustrate how to use do while and do until loops in Sheerpower to control the flow of your program based on specific conditions. The for next loop in Sheerpower is used to iterate over a range of values. Use the step option to specify an increment or decrement value. Repeat for repeats the current iteration, iterate for skips to the next iteration, and exit for exits the loop prematurely. In this example, we demonstrate the use of various for next loop constructs in Sheerpower. First, we create a simple for loop to iterate from 2 to 30. This loop prints the value of I from 2 to 30, incrementing by 1 each time. Next, we use a for loop with a step value to specify a different increment. This loop starts at 10 and increments by 4 each time, printing the values 10, 14, and 18. Then, we use the iterate for statement to skip an iteration. This loop prints the values from 1 to 10, but skips the iteration when I equals 5. Finally, we use the repeat for statement to repeat the current iteration. This loop prints the values from 1 to 10, but when I equals 5, it repeats the current iteration, causing an infinite loop at I equals 5. These examples illustrate how to use for next loops in Sheerpower, including the use of step, iterate for, and repeat for to control the flow of iterations based on specific criteria. Let's look at practical examples demonstrating the use of different loop constructs in Sheerpower. In this example, we demonstrate the use of do loop and for next loop constructs in Sheerpower. First, we create a do loop to read lines from a file and restart the loop based on a condition. This loop reads lines from a file until the end of the file, EOF, is reached. If a certain condition, sum_condition, is met, the loop restarts from the beginning. Next, we use a do, end do block to execute a loop once and exit based on a condition. This loop executes once and exits if a certain condition, sum_condition, is met. Finally, we create a for next loop and use the iterate for statement to skip an iteration. This loop prints the values from 1 to 10, but skips the iteration when I equals 5. These examples illustrate how to use do loop constructs and for next loops in Sheerpower, including the use of exit do, repeat do, and iterate for to control the flow of your loops based on specific conditions. Follow best practices for looping by choosing the appropriate loop construct for the task, keeping loop conditions clear and concise, avoiding infinite loops unless intentionally designed, and using exit and repeat statements judiciously. Understanding and effectively using looping constructs in Sheerpower is crucial for automating repetitive tasks and enhancing code efficiency. Mastering do loop, while, until, and for next loops will enable you to create more dynamic and responsive applications.